I started at BET. I was there for about 12 years. And so I actually started as their budget director on the East Coast in DC and Georgetown. Okay. And I transitioned to the West Coast and went on the creative side, became an executive producer, showrunner, and director.
Welcome to Altadena After the Fire. I'm your host, Colby Kolb. And on this episode, we're going to speak to an Altadena resident who was taking the darkness of the moment that happened with the fire and all of the other things that have occurred and turning it into something positive and actually something that could potentially reach a wider audience and captivate people to remember this terrible fire that happened in January 2025. Andre Barnwell, who is a showrunner, a producer, executive producer, and someone in the entertainment business who happened to live in Altadena, joins us today on the podcast. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for having me, Colby.
So, Andre, talk a little bit about living in Altadena, because it's such a unique community. And as I've been doing this podcast, I have, found a lot of people that I knew, especially in the entertainment industry, Black people that live in Altadena. And I had no knowledge of this community. So I've been learning over the past few months a lot about it. So give us some background on your time in Altadena.
Yeah, it's funny how things just kind of play themselves out. Like I was mentioning to you before, I'm from the East Coast. I grew up in Eaton, Pennsylvania, right outside of Philly. So a small, complete little town right outside of a major town. And then I end up coming to California, working at BET in Burbank. And when it was time to find a home, I was looking for that, try to kind of recreate the East Coast. And if you know anything about the topography out here, my boss at the time, he lived in this place called Altadena, which is right above Pasadena. And when I was in Burbank, I kind of liked the vibe of Pasadena. It was kind of low key. People didn't kind of ask you what you did. They kind of said hi first. Where, Hollywood's got a different kind of machine going over there. So I didn't like that kind of a vibe. So when it was time to purchase something, I wanted to kind of recreate home. It's funny, my mom laughs. She's like, you go way across the country just to pretty much find the same kind of thing that you grew up in. And Altadena had that kind of a vibe to it. And when my realtor was kind of taking me around, the house that I looked at, I was doing it at night, and it was an oak tree in front of this house. And I grew up in Eaton, Pennsylvania, with an oak tree on the side of my house and ivy. And I was like, whoa, and this was at night. I was like, no, that's it. I want that house. And she's like, you don't need to go in. And I was like, no, it's got plumbing, electric. I mean, it's a house. I'm single. So I'm like, as long as it was working. And Colby, that's literally how I just happened to find that vibe. I guess because my boss kind of lived up here, there was some kind of Black presence. He was from Detroit. And as I started to then stay up here a little bit longer, I started to find out the dynamics of Altadena, which is really interesting. I've been up here 25 years, and Altadena is sort of like in three pieces, right? There's East Altadena, which is kind of an affluent, kind of non-Black area. Then there's Central Altadena, which is a lot of a Black area, but like a working class Black area with a lot of generational families. So there's a grandmother, uncles, brothers, they're all kind of living around each other. And then there's this thing called like the Meadows, which is West Altadena, which my house is on the way to. And that's sort of like the Baldwin Hills View Park kind of a vibe for Black people in Altadena. So it had those kind of eclectic moves to it, real low key though. Most people, you kind of know your neighbors, but, people didn't really kind of get into your business. And then later on, I found out, there was such a high concentration of Black ownership in this area. And what they're saying that was back in the day in Pasadena, which is the flatland, whites wouldn't let you purchase in Pasadena. but the hills weren't as, back in those days, the hills weren't like the exciting part. That kind of switched. The 60s and 70s, then wealthy people thought the hills were needed to go.
Right.
But back in those days, the quote servants and working class people, you lived in the hills, and the wealthy people lived more where it was already commercially developed. But the trick was these Black families owned their homes, so they couldn't get rid of them. So it wasn't like, you can raise the rents and wipe out Black neighborhoods. These Black owners owned their homes, and I don't know what it was culturally, but a lot of their descendants stayed close. So right. When it was time for them to get their homes, they didn't tend to, go to LA. They didn't tend to go too far. They kind of stayed Altadena, Pasadena, and they kind of extended that. So there was an economic strength in all of these different relative connected families kind of locking onto properties. And that just made, for those who had, the wrong intentions trying to get rid of people, that almost made that impossible because, you're on the same street with your uncles, your aunties, your grandma, and then your kids. It's hard to pull that many mortgages out on some mean-spirited stuff. So
and Los Angeles is such an expensive place to live. So right. It ain't like you just moving around. If you can't really, even if you sold your house, where you're going to move to based on exactly. Where everything else costs a lot, right? So, and I'm pretty sure, what you're saying, it's funny you brought up Yaden because I grew up in Philadelphia, so I had a lot of friends in Yaden, and Yaden was sort of like the upper middle class, sort of suburban place for African Americans to excel. And it was a great community and everybody knew one another. And it's still a great community today. So I can see why you gravitated to this area. So, talk some about some of the businesses. You lived there for 25 years. So I'm pretty sure there are a lot of businesses, of residents that have businesses there. Right. What is that like? What's the vibe like in Altadena?
Altadena has, they're very sensitive about non-big commercial businesses coming up here. They don't really like franchises. They kind of like if you have a fast food restaurant, like you own it. It's not like a chain. They were very sensitive about major corporations having extensions, so that it kind of kept that kind of boutique kind of a feel. Almost every shop was like, individually owned. And so what that did is it kind of kept a low profile. Now, if you wanted to get into that kind of business, you could just go down the hill into Pasadena, and Pasadena, major city, had all of those things. But Altadena was able to keep that kind of quaint, kind of low key kind of a vibe where if you didn't know where you were going, you're not just driving around Altadena, because like my street, no sidewalks. And when the lights go out, when nature turns the lights off, man, there's coyotes, bears, there's all kind of stuff. And you're just like 2 blocks from civilization, but it's just so, and so the area just took on that kind of a low key, not loud approach. You met like even a couple of hardware stores, individually owned, or if it was a franchise, it was a tiny franchise, and they just would not allow like big construction to happen. Yeah. Everything was kind of on the small side. Sounds
like Martha's Vineyard. The same thing happens in Martha's Vineyard. Okay. So you love living there. So it just sounds like you have an affinity. So and during the 80s and 90s, there was a lot of gang violence in Los Angeles. Was Altadena sort of exempt from that?
No, Altadena, Pasadena, it has, growing up on the Pennsylvania, the whole gang thing was just not, it was more like streets, regional things. So the whole gang culture, I just didn't understand that because come from the East Coast, you don't have it. But no, they have, it is culturally ingrained in California and in major cities, gang culture. It's just, gang culture tended to be more prevalent with the economic status of the environment. And for a lot of Altadena, it just didn't have that kind of environment. But no, it's present just like, everywhere. I remember my nephew sent me a Phillies jersey, a bright red one. And I
You
said,
can't be doing
nephew,
that,
I love
bro.
you to death, but I can only wear that in my house. So, and then he's like, well, I'll get you
How does
Dodger
that work with
blue.
the Dodgers though? I mean, everybody loves the Dodgers. Don't matter if you Crip or Blood, right? How does that work?
No, you have to be, you know, if you're going to
Wow.
do Dodgers, you better be a Dodger white, you know what I mean, with just a
Right.
tiny bit. Yeah, because I mean, it is what it is out here. So you have to move smart. So me, I just say, you know what? I'm an Eagles fan anyway, so I'm going to come with my green. Sixers fan, so I didn't even get into any of that, except that, you know, I could wear some Flyer stuff, but no Phillies, unless it was no Phillies. Yeah, matter of fact, let me just stop that. Yeah, because it's no Philly stuff. So
So with you
I
being in the entertainment side of the business, what type of movies and TV shows were being filmed in Altadena? Because I just never remember, a show that I used to really like,
mhm,
The Closer and Major, with the secondary show that came against it, Major
okay.
Crimes.
Mhm.
Well, that show was really good in Los Angeles because it really like painted Los Angeles. Like they covered the whole community, and I watched every episode of that show, and I never ever heard of Altadena as a
Yeah.
community. Now it could have been a plot line or whatever that I just missed it. But what kind of entertainment has been filmed in that community?
Well, you know, this community, Altadena and Pasadena, anything outside of LA, you shoot there because it's less expensive to shoot there. But
Right.
it's almost being like exteriors for LA. It sort of reminds me of Jersey. You do a lot of shooting in Jersey, but New York gets the credit.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so
Hmm.
and for Pasadena and Altadena, they didn't really mind that because, you know, when you bring that attention, now you're bringing a whole different audience to the communities, right? And communities sort of like in Altadena, I mean, no one knows really what you do unless it's your immediate neighbor. You know what I mean? So it keeps that. So a lot of exterior shots and some things were happening out here. But now, because now remember, this is before the other states started getting aggressive and attracting television and film into their states. You know, Georgia's very aggressive. Louisiana's very aggressive. And now Texas I mean, they just wrote a check and they're like 250 million a year for the next 6 years to shoot in Texas. You know, Canada is very aggressive. So it's going to have to start to change in the sense that I think people are kind of tired of just New York City backdrops, LA backdrops, just because of the internet, just because of social influence. And now people are curious about the rest of the world. So people are curious about people who live in Mississippi and non-big cities, because at the end of the day, Kobe, I mean, it's and for me, wanted to do a high school show. It's like, I don't need to do a high school show in a major city to reflect high school life, right? Because, a locker is a locker, the cafeteria is a cafeteria, your friends are your friends. And so actually, the more local and unique you are, it, by definition, gives you a big story because people can relate to that life. And so that's where, in all of this tragedy, remember, my background is in comedy. So, comedy is kind of a weird genre in the sense that a lot of great comedians take tragedy and then turn that into something that makes people laugh, right? That's a hard thing. So even my perspective as a producer, I'm always looking at, okay, yes, these things happen, but let's take the glass half full as opposed to half empty. So anytime I approach something, I always approach it with that in
So
mind.
take
Sure.
us back to January when the fires happened. So your property was spared, but
Yes.
you had a lot of people that you knew who were affected by the fires. Did you ever, as a resident there, ever even fear that? Because everyone I talked to, most of the people were like, we never ever thought in a million years this could ever happen here. We
Right.
had moments, but it was like, nah, the hills would protect us and it would not happen. So talk a little bit about that day and how quickly it happened and, your observations as a resident for 25 years there.
Yeah, that's a great question because where I live on the crest of a hill. And in my section of Altadena, not that I want my house to burn down, but the winds is what they call the Santa Ana winds, and the storms would come through my part of the canyon. And even our insurance and even how the fire station addresses us in my particular area is we're the place where it's supposed to burn, because we're literally off the lip of the mountain coming down, and it's a gully, and that Santa Ana comes through there. And whew. So my whole time here has always been, so I've always been in that area. The people that got burnt out this time is what I call Central Altadena. It's the more flat land of Altadena. So by the time the winds used to come my way to them, they would get the winds, but they wouldn't get the 60-mile-an-hour winds. They wouldn't get the 70, because where I live is sort of like the brunt first. It hits my side first. And this is where my trees are falling down and all kind of stuff happening. But when you sign up for my particular area, and this is like West Altadena, when you sign up for this particular area, you're kind of signing up, kind of knowing that. It's sort of like signing up, living in New Orleans under a dam. I mean, you see this big brick wall.
A levee. Yeah, the levee.
I'm sorry. A levee. You know what I mean? And you buy your house, you like, you don't want anything to happen, but there's a 80-foot wall there for a reason. So
and it's wild when you go back to Katrina too, and you look at how the levees were, and it's like, wow, like you literally just live right under the water. Is right there. That's just so. Exactly. I'm telling you, these developers will build anywhere, anything. So out of this darkness, you had a lot of friends that you had to help through the process. You've seen a whole bunch of stuff in your community from the fire. You are developing a TV show sort of based in Altadena. So talk a little bit about this project that you're working on. Yeah.
So when those storms happened, I did not think that I was going to need to evacuate, right? Because we would get those 60, 70-mile-an-hour winds, but I have never experienced 90-mile-an-hour winds. So when people are talking about, well, y'all should have did this, y'all should have did this. When you have oak trees bending, an oak tree bending in front of your house, see, man can't handle that one. That's a whole nother level. I've never experienced those kind of winds before. And so when we had to evacuate, I didn't even know half of Altadena was burning, because the part of Altadena was burning never burned before. It never, ever burns over there like that. We're the first ones to take on that. So I stayed till I could that Tuesday night, and then, they're like, no, y'all got to go. My crazy neighbor next to me, he stayed. You're always going to have a couple of people. But four of my neighbors, their house is gone. So when I'm driving away, their houses are on orange fire. I mean, not smoldering, not a piece of their home. I mean, on fire. And so I just packed up what I could, because I was traveling. So I had some of my stuff in my bag. I had no idea that it was going to be the length of time that I did. And
do you have any lasting effect to your house since your neighbors burned? Was there any damage to any of your property?
No, and it's because they were downwind from me.
Got it. Okay.
You see what I'm saying? So I didn't even know they were on fire. Only thing, Kobe, was kind of crazy. There's a horse farm near where I live, and me and my neighbor were sort of out front, and we saw the horses running up our street, going up the hill. Now I live on the side of the hill.
They know.
Right? and I'm not thinking because I'm thinking horses run away from the fire, but horses never run uphill. But the fire was downhill, and they were running uphill to get away with it. So it was just, I don't know another word to say, a perfect storm, but it just was. I mean, and there's this guilt that you have, because my home is still here. And then I go back to, a third of Altadena is gone. And I know there's all of this, all of this excitement, but, being in television and understanding business, a lot of it's not coming back. It is what it is. There's just like, Altadena is not for sale. No, Altadena is for sale. It was for sale before the fires, and it's for sale after the fires. There's
a lot of wealthy people coming along with big checks to just take the land from everybody.
Well, it's what Altadena have feared, and what I think is happening it's foreign corporations through land companies are coming. It's not individuals. It's not like people from Pacific Palisades who had money, who don't want to rebuild there, are now going to move to Altadena. That's not what's happening. These are corporations who, to me, I can't prove it, but to me, want to put up multiplex apartment buildings up here as opposed to individual homes to maximize their profits.
They're buying bulk land to be able to build something. So,
exactly.
talk about this project. So what gave you the, tell a little bit about what it is, but also what inspired you to start putting this together?
Right. So my background's in television, in production. And when I was in the Oak Tree Inn in Monrovia, sitting there watching television because I'm evacuated, I saw a piece on some young people because in Altadena, one of the high schools that's close to me, I volunteer at the high school because they have an academy, an arts academy. So I'm big in kind of like passing the baton now, and I don't want to take this stuff that I've learned with me, right? You got to lead this on this side of the ground, right? So I'm big in, if we want to complain to other people about stuff, we got to know how to do these things so that we can do it ourselves. And there's a right way to do things. So I was really big on that. So I saw this interview, and they're talking to high school students, and it was like one of the first times that I saw on the news that they were actually talking to young people and just one-on-one to them, not their parents, not the buildings, not the structures. And time after time, I felt this sense of they wanted to get back to some kind of normalcy. They're a sophomore in high school, and they're part of the sports team, or they're a cheerleader, and they're missing that. And they don't care where they are. If they're on their auntie's bench, or extended family, there's a sense of they wanted to kind of get back. And I'm thinking, where we're from in Pennsylvania, it was God family football. And I could just imagine, it's like, if I didn't have my football, in those times, you're only thinking about what you do locally. I mean, high school is all about your high school, your rivalries, it's just so. And just that world, that is your world. And I said, well, as we're rebuilding, I said, and, I'm a creative person. I'm like, well, how can I participate in not only creating jobs, which a television show would do in this local area? Because there's a lot of people in the business that are scattered all through Altadena. And I'm like, okay, because the governor's talking about funding. I heard Magic Johnson was talking about funding, and everybody's talking about it. But I'm like, well, but how does that get to the people? And I said, especially, how does that get to our young people? And I just thought of those kids who are in the arts, who are doing the plays, or doing all that stuff, hoping that something could happen. I said, well, you know what? I know how to do that kind of stuff. I came off of doing my own sketch comedy show, so I know how to do episodic stuff. And I appreciated, my high school life. And I said, well, why don't I just do something where the young people are the stars? We can find talent here, because the talent is in Altadena and Pasadena, and do something where it doesn't necessarily remind them of all the terrible things that have happened at Altadena, but gives optimism. So I wanted to kind of recreate an environment so they could see something that will remind them of what high school life should be, and just do it in a more of an entertaining format. And then brand, like you were mentioning before, brand Altadena. The word Altadena is going around the world, but it's going around the world in a tragic sense. I said, well, I got my degree in marketing from Howard. I was like, let's brand it with something positive. In my mind, I was thinking like, and I'm going to age myself, but Dallas, the TV show, what that did for Dallas and Texas when they did a TV show called Dallas. So I was like, why can't we do that same thing? I didn't want to do Pasadena because this didn't really happen in Pasadena. This is a very Altadena kind of thing. I said, well, why not just brand this with something that even a kid from Nebraska could watch, and it doesn't necessarily remind you of all the negative things, but the optimism that can happen in a storyline that can be local, but as well as intriguing, broader. And that's why I kind of added a couple of elements to make it have a bigger appeal to it. But that's where, and I wanted to kind of challenge all of the people who said they wanted to come up here to help and start businesses and jobs. Like, well, let's help. let's help some of these young people become stars, and let's do some local production because we know putting that money back in the community only helps. And it's nothing for a series to go 5 years. So that's local crews, that's buying local food. That's a lot of stuff where it's not like throwaway money. You're actually investing back into the community, and you might find the next Denzel. You might find the next Halle Berry. You might find the next Tom Cruise. I mean, they started somewhere. So I'm like, starting with 16.
And also, we just witnessed Forever from Maria Bracacil, the Netflix show that was number one on Netflix, which was about young African-American teens in Los Angeles. So there is definitely a hunger for that type of content, and that shows that there is some success there. And so where are you at in the process of creating this show? What place are you at right now with it?
Well, the place I created the pitch deck for the show. I have the first episode shot for the show, and now I'm sharing that because to me, what I love about just how platforms are working now and being in California, it's not about money because the money's out here. I mean, California is the fourth largest GNP in the world. I think it's still there. So I'm wrapping that around my head. I'm like, the world, so the money is there. And I think that corporations and businesses have good intentions, but I think now as a creative, I have to meet them halfway now with developing it all, not just pitch them an idea. So have it all laid out as a storyline, like you're saying. And so pitch deck, episode. I wrote the first episode because I wanted to make sure they knew what the intent was for it. The goal is to then extend, with new writers and new directors for the series. And then the ultimate goal is all the talent is going to come from up here. So that was the goal. I said, let me share that story. And thank you for allowing me on your platform. I said, let me share that part first, because that to me is the most important part, as opposed to pitching stuff and getting into that Hollywood cycle. Well, this is not a Hollywood cycle kind of scenario. This is outside. I mean, we live in Altadena, Pasadena for a reason, right? So it's definitely not that. And it's a new kind of thing. And I wanted to show that you could do great stories. I think I mentioned or sent it to you that there's two high school shows that to me are bring back these kind of memories. And one is One Tree Hill that they shot in North Carolina. I think the WB did that one. And Degrassi, which is a Canadian show.
Canadian, yeah.
Yeah, that stayed focused. And my big thing too, Kobe, was I wanted to make sure the students stayed the stars. I hate it when you're in a young environment, but it's about the teachers or it's about the coaches, it's about the parents. I'm like, when I was in high school, I didn't care about all that stuff. It was you, your friends, and how you navigated through life. And I always gravitated. The only reality show I actually totally enjoyed when I was growing up was Two-A-Days on MTV. It was about a high school team in Hoover, Alabama. But the stars of the show were the players. And I just totally related to that. And I said, if I ever get an opportunity to do something like that, then that's what I want to present it with that in mind, because I want them to get a shot. And I want, like you said before, a kid in Tennessee can relate to Altadena because they're both 17 years old and they both go through those trials and tribulations. Some of my characters, like my cheerleaders in the characters, they're the only 10th graders on their senior cheerleading team. That is a huge, cheerleaders across the country understand what that means, what kind of pressure them little two sophomores are going to have, especially from their other sophomore friends, and they're on a senior squad. So I wanted to just give them an outlet to just for at least a half hour in their day, just, get back to, they got their whole life to work. Like me and you, it's like, I tell my nephew, it's like, man, you got your whole life to work. I enjoyed high school, so.
When will we be able to see, are you going to put out the episode or are you just waiting for something else before you release any of it?
Oh no! I'm totally in finance mode now. So it's all about getting the finances for it. So
Got
yeah,
it.
so
Got it.
so this is a whole thing about like when they said they wanted to reinvest in California and do stuff. I wanted to present something, invest in this, and so I'm at that mode. But I didn't want to just be talking it. I wanted to
Right.
be able to have so much of it done where it's almost like not necessarily a no brainer. But I want to reduce all the anxieties that you invest in this, you're investing back in the community, you're investing into the new star. So I'm literally at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just finding a couple of producers that, it really is a no-brainer. Like, you can employ folks and help people recover at the same time tell the story. I'm sure there's plenty of actors that lived in Altadena. There's plenty of folks that were in the business. So I think your idea is great, and I wish you the best of luck. And thank you
Well,
for
thank you.
this information. Now we gotta just wait and watch whenever it comes out, and hopefully you can get it on a nice platform where a lot of people can see it. But this was a great idea, Andre, and I applaud you for utilizing your resources in the entertainment business to create some sort of content that can live long beyond this tragedy.
And what's great about it, Kobe? You're the first one that broke it. So when this becomes reality, and like, well, who broke it? I said, my man back there that went to Temple, he broke this. You see what I'm saying?
Good
So
stuff, man.
I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, well, listen, man, we're all in this together, and I think any ideas that people have to help the community recover, I'm all for it. And let's keep it out here because it's kind of fading in the news cycle, and I know
Yes.
that the stress and the anxiety of losing all of your belongings and your community weighs hard on a lot of people. So, and this will be a lot of people will reminisce on this too. They'll reminisce of their time in Altadena when they see it. So I'm wishing you, positive vibes and good luck to get it out. And how can people follow you or connect with you so they can keep up with your projects?
Well, fortunately, I have a YouTube channel. I don't know if I mentioned before, but when I was at BT, I did a sketch comedy show called The Way We Do It. So I put and I own my show. And so I put the 36 episodes of The Way We Do It on my YouTube channel, The Way We Do It. So at TWWDI TV. And they can connect to me through that because great talent, which I had there. I do stuff with Ricky Smiley, some celebrities and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I wanted to do that as well because I just wanted to kind of show young people that, these tools that we have out here, we need to take advantage of them. And to this date, I mean, YouTube is still free. You have to put the work in. But and it also helps when people just want to evaluate you. And if you have footage and you have video of what you've done, like I directed the second season of it, so I don't have to go back and get questioned about, do you know how to do a directing? It's like, no, okay, check this one out. And so so that's the way they can find me through my YouTube channel. The Way We Do It would be great.
Well, thank you, Andre, for giving us some time today, and good luck on this project, and good luck to the community of Altadena, man. We send our prayers and warm energy of support to get folks back on their feet. And I love your idea, and I hope you're able to get the funding and get it out. And I can't wait to watch it.
And just to end it with you, Kobe, I follow you as well, and I appreciate what you're doing over there at Radio One. And I saw an interview with you where you were talking about radio and how that is such an integrated into Black culture. And that's so huge. And I like how you've been very aggressive with getting your creative folks and your sales folks on one page and rebrand radio and take credit for what you guys have done. I mean, I see little things like that. That's what young people pick up on. And you have to do it. And I know that you probably don't sleep a lot, but you're driving that and you're creating a culture where people can mimic the positive culture, positive habits. And so that's so important. So I appreciate you doing that because I grew up WDAS, you know what I mean? It's like I grew up when I was even at Howard, HUR. I mean, radio is such a huge part of my lifestyle. Even to this day, I still got radios. And so I applaud you doing that because that's really important and letting these young people know why it's still important, especially Black culture. I mean, the radio and Black culture is just like salt and pepper. So I thank you as well.
All right, well, Andre Barnwell, good luck with your project, and thanks for joining Altadena After the Fire.
Thank you, Kobe. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Altadena After the Fire. If you found this episode meaningful, please share it to help spread awareness. To support those affected by the Eaton Fire, consider donating to the Brotherhood Crusade's Wildfire Relief Fund at brotherhoodcrusade.org. Your contributions provide essential resources like food, medicine, and housing assistance to families in need. If you have updated information or a first-hand story to share, we'd love to hear from you. Contact details are in the show notes. Altadena After the Fire is an Urban One podcast. Executive producer and host, Kobe Tyner. Assistant producer, Jahi Whitehead. Director of podcasting, Dre Smith. Special thanks to the Urban One Cares team and our founder, Kathy Hughes. Thank you for tuning in. See you next time.